Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a bill which guards Singaporeans against interferences and influences which are unseen and mostly unknown. It does not engage in petty partisan politics. It leaves aside all disagreements among ourselves. It leaves undisturbed poor ideas, ignorant views. It respects the naive and the mistaken. Any harm arising from these are of our own making. After all, it is the mark of all free societies that we take this form of rough with the smooth. Accepting these rough edges, we must therefore accept that we will continue to make mistakes. There will be those who believe their ideas are good when they are poor. The bill is no arbiter in this contest. What it will do is to make sure that all ideas to come into our political arena do so through the front door, through an open political contest, and that they cannot sneak in through the back under technological cover, wearing a false face and pretend to serve the public interest when they are in the back pocket of foreign or private actors. This bill stands against those who are knowingly malicious and against those who have been unknowingly used. It is the latest in a long line of efforts to keep Singapore free. Freedom. Freedom is a word not used lightly in Singapore. The idea of freedom means something specific to a small country in a volatile neighborhood. It means an often taken for granted but still slightly cherished power to decide our own fate. Because this freedom is hard-won, and because the battle remains as fierce today as it did in 1965. We must see what laws can best serve to protect it. This bill targets the enemies of this freedom so that we can fully exercise the larger internal freedoms that I spoke of earlier, to ensure that our civil liberties and our political contests remain our own. Sir, to recognize the hidden hands requires no small skill because the seduction is so slight, the pushes so subtle. We might sometimes think we are exercising free will when we are mere cat's paws. I speak today with some experience of POFMA, having been a member of the Select Committee on Deliberate Online Falsehoods, which was formed in January 2018, so that's more than 3 years ago, and where we considered 169 written representations and oral evidence from 65 individuals and organizations. Some of these were shared by the Minister earlier in his speech. There were also public hearings held from 14 March to 29 March 2018. In fact, it lasted 8 days in all. So when the Honourable Mr. Leong Man Wai says there was not enough evidence gathered or consultations done, I'm not sure what he makes of these 169 written representations and the 65 oral evidence from individuals and organizations. The issue of foreign interference is complex and enduring one, made more powerful in recent years by technological platforms. We must be clear that these technologies are not neutral between public good and harm. We cannot leave these untended and expect ordinary citizens who already have so much cognitive tax in their daily lives to be inoculated against these malicious campaigns. Our digital lives have opened many new possibilities, but along with the sunlight, we have an infestation of lies. In 2019, then Senior Minister for State for Law, Mr. Edwin Tong, foreshadowed this bill when he said that the government was considering legislation against foreign interference. And let me quote him. He said, "Today, information can easily be weaponized by foreign actors at low cost and with anonymity and impunity. No country is immune. This is asymmetric information warfare fought in a theater and era with no distinction between war and peace. In this battlefield, Singapore, an open, democratic, digitally connected and diverse country, is especially vulnerable. We are a young country with sensitive fault lines that foreign actors can exploit to foment distrust and ill will among of various communities, unquote. So at that time, Mr. Edwin Tong was responding to a parliamentary question. This was again, let me repeat that, 2019. But the stage had already been set a few years earlier. We have heard these issues discussed deeply at the Select Committee hearings. We have heard evidence from experts during the Select Committee hearings that hostile information campaigns are becoming cheaper to mount and become more prevalent. The point of these campaigns is to weaken the target country, turn brother against brother, countrymen against each other, race against race, undermining social cohesion with fights constructed with false sticks and stones. The Select Committee also received evidence, including through private hearings, that state-sponsored information operations have been carried out against Singapore. A third foreshadowing of this bill happened at the Committee of Supply in 2019 and again in 2021. The government ministers then spoke about how foreign interference laws would need to be introduced and its efforts in tracking the legislative response in other countries. Fourth, this has been a hot issue discussed among our think tanks and at the universities, most notably at the Foreign Interference Conference organized by NTU's RSIS in September 2019. This topic has certainly been long on the radar, both of the government and of the people. It is not new, and certainly does not lack for airing or consultation. So really, for those who ask why are we rushing through this bill and ask for more consultation, I hope we realize this bill has been in the works for some time already, a few years in the making actually, and there has certainly been no lack of consultations and feedback. To Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Mr. Pritam Singh, who referred to Chris D'Souza's PQ in March this year, and Second Minister for Home Affairs, Mrs. Josephine Teo's reply, let me remind him that this was during the COS 2021 debate. I should reiterate that this process started way before March 2021, and this was also not the first time that MHA had stated the need for such a bill. My second point has to do with the signature of our defense against external threats. Unity has been our clarion call since the nation began, against the call of race, religion, against the multiplicity of the Babel Tower of languages. We form our own tribal instincts. Today we have more need than ever for such instincts. This communitarian commitment, which is not natural, but chosen by all of us who have decided to call this place home. This injunction to think beyond oneself, this seeking for things that matter, this Singaporean spirit is one that we must seek to grow and nourish. We cannot do this if we keep using the infantilizing versions of those words of safety and protection, which can degenerate into nothing more than an entitled demand for special accommodation, for care for oneself, and a refusal to follow the same rules that apply to everyone else. To see what true public interests comprise against a private, self-regarding clamour, we must have space for open, transparent, and accountable debates. We must see that all disagreements amongst ourselves are taken seriously and welcome, and that it is our joint duty to ensure that such debates reflect our own views, rather than those of outside agents. This bill is not a mollycoddle of resources to protect and bubble-wrap Singaporeans, but a sword so that we are armed against those who seek to harm us. It is a true countermeasure, a necessary response to attacks which I am sure will come. So the earlier we are prepared for it, the better. FICA does not increase the reach of the law in substance. It merely provides the adapter, allowing the law to operate in a more targeted and precise manner. In this way, its reach is narrower and would in fact increase freedoms. FICA is not more authoritarian than other similar laws, for example, what is in the States now. FICA is a sword that stays in the shelf most of the time. It has a high threshold which will not be awakened until activities attack the public interest of Singapore. This bill gives us the power towards early detection and exposure. We have always relied on this sunlight in the past, and we must do so again. As for the criticism on this bill from activists and academics, the Ministry of Home Affairs, Minister himself, has already responded to some of these. As a Member of Parliament in this House, let me say this with ample evidence from our own history. There can be no civil liberties if activists can be bought or sold. And there can be no academic freedom if our universities are homes for foreign agents. It will be naive to believe that all activists are high-minded patriots, just as it is mere pretense that all academics are cultivating young minds for the good of Singapore. In the real world, there are active, hostile, and intentional actors working against the public interests of Singaporeans. All of us, in both sides of this House, would have failed in our duty if, in the face of such clear and present danger, we stand by and fold our arms. Sir, I support the bill.